What was your first reaction to reading the John Lothian newsletter?
I was so befuddled. I'd never experienced, I guess, kind of an industry. Um, it's like you're indescribable, right? It's kind of like you're, I don't want to say like gossip columnist or something. It's like journalist, gossip, like, rumors, like, but you're this central figure in the industry. Everybody's reading your newsletter. You put your own commentary in it. So, you get your thoughts. And I had just, worked across several industries. And then also as a consultant in my prior life, like had, you get to know all the industries you work in. For me, it was healthcare, sports, entertainment, financial services, you name it. And I just never come across like a character, for lack of a better word, like you, which I loved, of course. And it also made me realize kind of how close knit the futures industry is, and kind of it really, to me still does seem like everybody knows everybody. And I had never, again, experienced anything like that. I mean, also just coming from like JP Morgan, where alone they have thousands of employees, tens of thousands of employees all around the world, and are in this kind of, far-flung kind of industry where you could meet somebody at a conference, never see them again for the rest of your life. I very quickly learned that that was not how, the futures industry was. And I was, I think very intrigued by what your role was. and yeah, but I mean, obviously, I'm out of the industry and still getting your newsletter, and I love it. And I love, being able to keep up with kind of everybody and the twists and turns. So I think you play a really important but very, very unique role.
What were your favorite parts of writing the book?
Hearing like the drama that I never got to see when ICE made the counteroffer. They had a very intricate, PR plan where they were, like they had CNN ready, they had like paid off this hotel worker to go slip a note under, Charlie Carey's door in the morning that has a $1 billion higher offer for the Board of Trade. And so hearing about how they pulled that off and just what the reactions were of shock and like mass chaos, and how it was done at an industry event, I just thought that was brilliant. Like it was cinematic in my mind. I wrote it like seeing it, And then the other one was there was specifically a chapter dedicated to this guy, but also just kind of anytime he pops up in the book, a guy named Will Vickers. He is an extraordinarily wealthy Australian investor who at the time I believe was the majority shareholder of the Board of Trade. If not, he was one of the biggest. This guy was like true international man of mystery. Every time I talked to him, he was like, "Oh, I'm in Vanuatu on a yacht, like, sailing and doing this, or I'm in, New Caledonia, or I'm in here and there." And I hadn't even heard of half these places. And I'm a big traveler. I was like, who is this guy? But he was always so kind. He would talk to me like in rides here and there, and really, I think gave that like what I didn't even know was a missing piece of the story, which was, coming from just a purely financial, shareholder perspective. What was he looking for? What was he thinking? And I mean, of course, he loved this entire thing, right? You push up the market value, billions of dollars. Like, who's not gonna like that? And I have followed him ever since. Like, I've kind of, like Google his name every once in a while, see what he's up to, and he's still doing very well for himself. So he was just a fascinating guy to write about.
How did you get published?
Day one of CME Group was, I believe, July 1st, 2007. And weirdly enough, I had been, asked if I wanted to stay, but I knew that I wanted to try and do this. I never told anybody I was writing a book about them, but I didn't fully lie in that I said I would like to, take a package and like try and start a writing career. So what you do when you write nonfiction, it's not like if you're trying to write, a fiction book where you kind of have to write out the whole book and then turn in a manuscript. With nonfiction, it's almost more like a business proposal where you have to, size the market, talk about how you would advertise it, who's the average reader. You do 2 sample chapters. But it's really kind of like a competitive analysis, what other books are kind of like it, all this sort of thing. So I gave myself a year, again, starting in mid 2007. If anybody out there remembers what happened in 2008, it was the financial crash. And so I had gotten a literary agent, but when the crash happened, everybody was like, we only want the, Andrew Ross Sorkins of the world and kind of like the famous journalists. We want their books, we want their take on all of this. So that's when, his Too Big to Fail came out, and All the Devils Are Here, and, a whole bunch of great books kind of about the crash. And so nobody wanted to hear from like me, who nobody knew. And then in late 2009, my agent called me up again, and he's like, oh, I talked to this woman about your project and she seems interested. And then, it was go time, and I had 9 months or whatever to do all the research, call all you guys, get my act together.
What is next?
I will always regret it if I don't at least try, to write a screenplay based off of Zero Sum Game. I think that the more time that goes by, the more I realize that it took place in a time. So it could be almost like I don't want to say period piece, but I mean, the floor was still there, the trading floor was still there. I mean, this stuff like isn't there anymore. Just the whole like culture, a lot of things shifted after that time. You have really big personalities, you have built-in drama, it's a true story. I just think that, when I look at a book like The Big Short, and then what they did with that in the movie is like incredibly complicated. Like shorting, like the housing industry, like all this, some mortgages, whatever, and how they got, Brad Pitt and Steve Carell, like all these people. I was like, this is at its heart a way more entertaining story like than that, and it affects people's daily lives. So I'm definitely interested in that. And of course, you and I are going to work together on some projects coming up that I'm interested about, also about just kind of the history of the industry. But I do have to ask you, well, I will also say that just another reason why I'm just feeling like the timing could be right, for a screenplay for something like Zero Sum Game, and, this battle for the Board of Trade, is that also, a lot of the most critically acclaimed series and movies are this sort of thing. They're about like business dramas. Succession was one of my favorite shows of all time. Billions, like I already said, The Big Short. Industry is a newer one. The Dropout, about, there's multiple ones about Theranos. So right now, I think there's, and for the foreseeable future, I think there's going to be an appetite for kind of these real life stories. And again, when people connect them to like our daily lives, there's a real like powerful, story to be told, movie to be made.